Breaking news. Remember the back and forth between the Oversight Committee on Capitol Hill, which is led by Chairman Comer of Kentucky. There was again, they knew because of whistleblowers, and Chuck Grassley's talked about this, Senator Grassley from Iowa. So serious members of Congress have had a whistleblower came forward and said there's a confidential informant came forward to the FBI alleging that Vice President Biden and that the FBI did take this down in one of their investigative sheets, these 1023 forms that they use when someone comes with information. And this informant said that in a detailed way, is what was told to them, a very detailed way, explained how then Vice President Biden took it was exact $5 million, what would be a bribe to enact specific policy, and the bribe came from a foreign national. So they have this information on Capitol Hill. They said the big question to the FBI was not even necessarily, they can't claim that it's all correct. No one can say that yet. But it's, hey, what did you do with this information? Because there's also been reports that derogatory information, not just the laptop, but other derogatory verified information about Hunter Biden has been moved around FBI computer systems so that current investigators can't get access to it who are investigating Hunter Biden. So there's a lot of real issues tied to this. Well, they said if Christopher Wray didn't provide this, they were going to hold him in contempt, which you can then is actually actionable in court. I don't believe this Department of Justice would do anything with it, kind of like when Eric Holder was held in contempt for failing to provide the documents on Fast and Furious, a similar kind of situation there. Congress has oversight. So then they said, fine, you can come over to the FBI, you can look at the redacted version of the SCIF. Just breaking now, as when Congress said, no, that's not good enough, now the FBI is bringing the document to Congress. I don't think we've had yet a statement from Comer on whether or not they believe that's going to satisfy, but I want to go to Rick Renell on this because, Rick, I think what this shows, and you come out of the national security world, is that by pushing the FBI here and using the ability, because we do have chairmanships and we do have controls of committee in the House, and they weren't willing to say, okay, fine, we'll go look at a fully redacted version over at the FBI headquarters. They've at least now gotten to the point by using their congressional oversight authority, say, no, you bring it to us, and it might be a version they say, hey, this was overly redacted, but they have moved the ball forward so far from just 2 weeks ago when the FBI even denied that it existed. 2 weeks ago, they would not even admit that this document existed. Then they admitted it existed, and now they're bringing it to Congress.
Well, they better let oversight members see it in an unredacted form. They cannot hide this information. One thing that I know personally is that the FBI has over-redacted documents in the past, not because they're trying to protect a source or a method, but because they're trying to cover up bad processes. The FBI has some PR issues, some credibility issues, and so they redact information to protect themselves. I confronted this directly, and it's clear that the leadership is more interested in protecting the FBI's reputation than they are seeking the truth. This is just a fact. And FBI agents, rank and file agents who are wonderful patriots, are really frustrated. I hear from them regularly to say that our leadership is the problem. And I agree. We have to separate, we have to bifurcate the rank and file at the FBI from the FBI leadership, because I don't believe that FBI agents who are doing good work to protect America are being served well by their leaders. And they don't believe they're being served well by their leaders. So we've got a real problem. When we see Christopher Wray, and I hope that he personally comes on Monday and doesn't send somebody else, but that he confronts the issue and answers the question from our oversight members of Congress as to why has this document been in his hands for almost 3 years and none of this came out. Now, we do know that the Hunter Biden laptop story became immediately politicized when it came out from 51 officials who said, don't look at the laptop because it's Russian disinformation. At the same time that they knew that this laptop was real, they had this document from a whistleblower also saying that Joe Biden is compromised. Look, we need to get to the bottom of this. You cannot hide information from the Oversight Committee in this way. And why hasn't the FBI been fast-tracking investigations? Look, you look at what they've done to George Santos Immediately, his lies were exposed, and he's now being prosecuted. How fast was that compared to Chris Wray having a document for 3 years and not acting on it? This is outrageous.
It's like he's in Congress a couple months, and he votes with the majority of Republicans, and suddenly becomes number one enemy of the state. And again, it just shows how quickly the FBI can act if they do want to act, including against in the more politicized world where they have to be more careful. And I don't think they're getting heavily criticized there. It's just, it shows the speed. I want to stick with the FBI for a second here because we also have Jim Jordan. This is an interesting move because we got a special counsel, Jack Smith, who's investigating President Trump. And so you got one of the multiple investigations going on. In an interesting move, because of the Durham report and because of what we've learned about the FBI, Jim Jordan has asked specifically that information to the special counsel. It's not a subpoena yet. Right now, it's a question. It goes to the Attorney General who oversees, so Merrick Garland. And it asks just three things, Rick. Basically, it's who at the FBI is on, from how many FBI Washington, D.C. field office agents are on this case, how many Washington, D.C. headquarters agents are working with Jack Smith, and then most importantly, how many of these agents worked on previous Trump investigations? Because we know those investigations were filled with Peter Strzok infiltrated by politics instead of facts.
Look, what we do know is that many of these investigations clearly had information showing that the investigation's mandate was phony. It showed that people lied, and yet those individuals continued to pursue an investigation. I think that they've got terrible pattern recognition skills. I think that they don't really display an expertise in finding out fake documents. They shouldn't be on future cases. I actually think that every single person that participated in the Russian collusion investigation and never raised their hand to say, wait a minute, this is phony. They had the information. They saw the information. They saw it unredacted. They had it all. Someone should have said, this is phony, and we're not going to participate in this. If they held their nose, if they saluted their leadership, and they continued to serve on a phony investigation after seeing evidence that it was phony, they should be fired, actually, because they don't know what they're doing, and we shouldn't have trust in their skills and their investigation skills, let alone to put them on a new investigation that involves Donald Trump. What a disaster.
It involves their same political target that they have this hatred for because of their personal politics and the ideas of policy, which is not their job in the FBI. Turn one more political issue, and I thought it was interesting too how President Trump handled this last night in a town hall on Fox News with Sean Hannity, because he was kind of learning as in full time as it kind of broke that we saw another fall by President Biden, this time at the Air Force Academy graduation, a pretty extensive, very public fall, and I think where President Trump said we're not making fun of people, but let's also remember that people made fun of him for not running down a slick ramp, which any of us could fall down. So he didn't make those falls because he had the idea in place that this is not good imagery for the world. So I need to be extra careful when I'm walking up the stairs. I need to be extra careful when I'm walking down a thing so I don't have imagery around the world. And now I think this is the 10th time and Biden the third time this year of a fall that we've had captured that it just looks pretty chaotic and unfortunately looks. I think that the politics of it are interesting, not to make fun of someone, Rick, but just the fact that it just doesn't seem like a good image to put off from the leader of the United States.
Well, a couple of points. One, I thought that President Trump's comments were fantastic. When he found out about it, he immediately said, oh, gosh, I hope he's not hurt. That's the President Trump that I know personally. He's a very caring person, but he's also a fighter. And when you try to push back at him, he's going to fight even harder to make his points. And so I thought his initial reaction was really good. And he also said something was really interesting. He said, look, this happens to people. It might happen to me in the future, but it's not a good look. You got to be very careful. And clearly Joe Biden is not being that careful. He's not a normal person, Joe Biden. He's the president of the United States. That's why we have 24 hours security surrounding him. Everything is tested. We recognize that it's the position, not the man. And so the position of the president of the United States, the leader of the free world, whoever is in that job needs to be highly protected. I found it really troubling that after he fell, and at his age, to have that, hard of a fall. I know people who've broken their hips and never come back from a fall like that. But the reality is that he couldn't get up. You look at the video, he tried to push himself up and he couldn't. He was on the ground and unable to stand up, and he had to have assistance. Now, once he got up, he was able to walk to his chair. But I found that after the fall, trying to get up, the struggle to get up was the worst picture that we could have sent around the world.